Imagine walking into your living room, ready to start your day, only to be stopped in your tracks by a scene that leaves you speechless. Lying on the dog bed isn't your dog. It's an entire family of wild bobcats. A mother curled protectively around her 3 tiny kittens, all sleeping soundly in a tangle of spotted fur, as if they'd always belonged there. Pat and Roger Kellerman thought they'd seen it all after years of living on the edge of Arizona's Sonoran Desert, until the morning they witnessed this. What began as chaos quickly turned into one of the most heartwarming and unexpected moments of their lives. But the most shocking part wasn't the bobcats. It was Indy. The dog stood just 5 feet away, frozen in pure confusion and disbelief. He wasn't barking. He wasn't moving. He just stared, like he was trying to ask his owners a few serious questions. And the best part? Indy's priceless reaction. Stay tuned. You have to see it to believe it. Before we start, hit the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Pat Kellerman had always considered herself a woman who could handle just about anything. At 72, she'd raised 4 children, survived the Arizona real estate crash of 2008, and once talked down a rattlesnake that had decided her front porch was prime sunbathing territory. Her husband Roger, a retired dentist with a dry wit and an impressive collection of Hawaiian shirts, often joked that his wife could negotiate world peace if only the United Nations would give her a chance. Their home in Scottsdale sat on the edge of the McDowell Sonoran Preserve, a sprawling desert landscape where saguaro cacti stood like sentinels and coyotes sang their evening songs. They'd chosen this spot precisely because they loved wildlife. From a distance. Inside their comfortable adobe-style house lived the true king of their domain, Indy, a 6-year-old Nova Scotia duck tolling retriever whose intelligence was matched only by his devotion to his oversized dog bed positioned perfectly in front of the living room fireplace. Indy had opinions about everything. If you moved his water bowl 3 inches to the left, he'd stare at it for a full minute before reluctantly taking a drink, as if to say, "I'm doing this under protest." If dinner was 5 minutes late, he'd sit by the kitchen door and sigh. An actual, audible sigh that could make even Roger feel guilty. But despite his diva tendencies, Indy was family, and that plush, memory foam dog bed Pat had splurged on last Christmas was his throne, his sanctuary, his one true love. It was a Tuesday in late October when their ordinary life took an extraordinary turn. "Roger!" Pat's voice echoed through the house with unusual urgency. "Roger, get up here." Roger set down his crossword puzzle. He'd been stuck on 47 across for 20 minutes anyway, and climbed the stairs to find his wife standing in the hallway, eyes wide, pointing at the ceiling. "Do you hear that?" He listened. At first, nothing. Then, there it was. Not one soft mewing sound, but multiple. A chorus of tiny, plaintive cries that were almost like kittens, but somehow different. More wild, more desperate. "It's in the attic," Pat whispered, as if speaking too loudly might spook whatever was up there. Roger fetched his flashlight and the fold-down ladder, and with considerably more huffing and puffing than he'd like to admit, hauled himself up into the dusty darkness. His flashlight beam swept across boxes of Christmas decorations and forgotten exercise equipment until it landed on not 1, not 2, but 3 pairs of enormous, terrified eyes. "Well, I'll be damned," Roger muttered. "Pat, you better come up here." Huddled together behind an old lamp were the scruffiest, most pathetic baby bobcats he'd ever seen. They couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 weeks old, their spotted fur matted with dust, their oversized paws still clumsy and puppy-like. When the light hit them, All three let out sounds that were equal parts hiss and cry, backing themselves into a corner like tiny spotted balloons that had all the air let out of them. One was noticeably bolder than the others, ears forward despite its fear. Another seemed to be the smallest, pressing against its siblings. The third kept making little chirping sounds as if calling for their mother. "Oh my God," Pat breathed, her head poking up through the attic opening. "There's 3 of them." 20 minutes later, they'd consulted Google, called 4 different wildlife agencies, and learned more about bobcats than either of them ever expected to know. The Southwest Wildlife Conservation Center would take the kittens, they were assured, but first they had to catch them. Bobcats, even baby ones, had sharp claws and sharper teeth, and were decidedly not interested in being handled by humans. The average litter size was 2 to 4 kittens, and somehow all 3 of this family had ended up in their attic. "The chicken," Pat announced, snapping her fingers. "We'll use the entire rotisserie chicken from last night." Roger raised an eyebrow. "That was supposed to be our dinner for the rest of the week." "Our dinner can wait. We have a situation. Multiple situations." They fashioned 3 traps from plastic storage containers, propped sticks, and what Roger privately mourned was an entire week's worth of poultry. Then they waited, and waited, and waited. Indy, sensing something was amiss, stationed himself at the bottom of the attic ladder, occasionally glancing up and then at his humans as if to say, "You two have officially lost it." It took 4 hours, 4 long hours, during which Pat read an entire gardening magazine, Roger fell asleep in his chair twice, and Indy stress ate 3 dental chews. But finally, they heard it. The first clatter, then the second, then the third, followed by a symphony of high-pitched yowls from 3 very frightened, very trapped bobcat kittens. The tricky part was getting them down the ladder. The bold one hissed like a tiny demon. The smallest one made sounds that broke Pat's heart, desperate mews that sounded exactly like it was crying for its mother. The chirping one wouldn't stop vocalizing, creating a constant stream of bobcat commentary that Roger was certain could wake the dead. The Southwest Wildlife Conservation Center was everything they'd hoped. Professional, caring, and remarkably calm about the whole affair. A young woman named Maria with kind eyes and a no-nonsense ponytail took the 3 kittens, now wrapped in towels and looking more indignant than terrified. 3 kittens, Maria said, examining them carefully. "This is a good-sized litter. Mom's probably been frantic looking for them. They must have wandered through a hole in your roof while learning to explore. At this age, they're just starting to get mobile and curious. We'll keep them safe until she's found, or if she doesn't show up within 48 hours, we'll raise them until they can be released back into the wild." Pat watched as the bold kitten tried to escape from its towel. The small one huddled silently, and the chirpy one continued its running commentary. "They're so different from each other," she observed. Maria smiled. "They always are. Just like human kids. Bobcat kittens develop distinct personalities early on." Pat and Roger drove home feeling like wildlife heroes, already planning the story they'd tell at their next book club meeting. They'd saved 3 baby bobcats. They were basically running a wildlife rescue operation. This would be the talk of the neighborhood for months. The universe, it seemed, had other plans. They returned home to find their front door swinging gently in the evening breeze. Roger froze. "I locked that. I know I locked that." "The wind," Pat said, but her voice was uncertain. The Arizona monsoon season brought powerful gusts, but still. Indy greeted them at the door with unusual agitation, dancing from paw to paw, whining softly. His eyes kept darting toward the hallway, toward the guest bathroom at the end. "What's wrong, buddy?" Pat knelt down, scratching behind his ears. Roger, flashlight in hand once again, he was really getting a workout today, walked slowly down the hall. "Probably just a bird got in through the open door," he said, more to convince himself than anyone else. Or maybe a lizard. He reached the bathroom and flicked on the light. Time seemed to slow down. Roger would later describe what happened next in vivid detail at parties, his Hawaiian shirt nearly vibrating with the memory. There, perched on the bathroom counter between the soap dispenser and Pat's reading glasses, was the mother Bobcat. She was magnificent, easily 30 pounds of pure muscle and fury, with tufted ears and eyes that gleamed with primal fear and maternal rage. Her coat was thick and spotted, and even in her terror, she radiated the kind of wild power that reminded Roger exactly why humans had once feared the wilderness. For one frozen moment, man and beast stared at each other, each equally terrified of the other. Then all hell broke loose. The Bobcat launched herself off the counter, ricocheted off the shower curtain, bringing it and its rod crashing down in a metallic symphony of chaos, scrambled across the bathroom floor, leaving deep scratches in Pat's carefully chosen bath mat, knocked over the wastebasket, sending tissues flying like confetti, and somehow wedged herself behind the toilet, making herself as small as possible despite weighing as much as a toddler. Roger, to his credit, didn't scream. He did, however, back out of the bathroom with impressive speed for a 74-year-old man with a trick knee and slammed the door shut. "Pat!" he yelled. "Pat! We have a bigger problem!" What followed was perhaps the most surreal evening of their lives. Pat called 911, then called back to clarify that no, it wasn't a burglar. It was a bobcat. Yes, a real bobcat. No, she wasn't confused. Yes, she understood that this was technically the wildlife department's jurisdiction, but could they please send someone anyway because there was a 30-pound wildcat behind her toilet? Meanwhile, Roger attempted to barricade the bathroom door with their bookshelf, a dining room chair, a decorative floor vase Pat had bought in Mexico, and for good measure, a coat rack. Indy sat in the living room, ears perked, occasionally tilting his head as muffled yowls and hisses emanated from the bathroom. "She followed the scent trail," Pat said, her voice breaking slightly. "She was looking for her babies. All 3 of them." The wildlife officers arrived 45 minutes later. Officers Chen and Rodriguez, both seasoned professionals who'd clearly seen stranger things than a bobcat bathroom occupation, though Roger suspected not by much. "She tracked them from the roof, through your attic," Officer Chen explained, surveying the situation. "When she found the door open, maternal instinct took over. Now she's terrified and cornered, which makes her dangerous. Female bobcats are incredibly devoted mothers. They're the sole caregivers for their young." What followed was a delicate operation involving nets, thick gloves, calm voices, and more patience than Roger knew he possessed. They removed the barricade piece by piece, opened the door just a crack, and began talking softly to the frightened animal. "It's okay, Mama," Officer Rodriguez cooed, as if addressing a frightened child. "We're going to take you to your babies. All 3 of them are safe. Nobody's going to hurt you or them." It took nearly 2 hours. 2 hours of gentle encouragement, strategic positioning of nets, and one heart-stopping moment when the bobcat made a break for it, only to be carefully guided, not forced, guided, into a large carrier. Through it all, the animal's fear was palpable. She wasn't aggressive. She was a mother who had lost her 3 kittens and would stop at nothing to find them. Pat found herself openly crying. She was just looking for her babies, she whispered to Roger, who wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Can you imagine coming back to find all three of them gone? The officers drove the mother to the conservation center, where they assured Pat and Roger the reunion would be immediate. Maria called an hour later, her voice thick with emotion. You should have seen it, Maria said. The moment we opened the carrier, she went straight to them. Started grooming all three immediately. The little one, the smallest, just pressed right up against her. The bold one started nursing right away. And the chatty one wouldn't stop chirping, like it was telling her everything that happened. It was beautiful. After an examination, Maria explained, all four would be released together at the preserve's edge the next morning. They'll probably head straight back into the wild, she said. These are wild animals. They want nothing to do with humans. Pat and Roger went to bed exhausted, emotionally drained, and convinced their strange adventure was finally over. Indy slept on his bed, one eye occasionally opening to check on his humans, as if making sure they weren't going to do anything else crazy. His bed seemed extra comfortable that night, extra safe, and he stretched out with a satisfied groan. The morning sun painted the desert in shades of gold and pink when Pat shuffled into the living room, coffee mug in hand, ready for a normal, boring, Bobcat-free Wednesday. She stopped so abruptly that coffee sloshed onto the floor. There, on Indy's memory foam dog bed, his throne, his sanctuary, his most prized possession, was the entire Bobcat family. Mother and all three kittens were arranged in a perfect pile of spotted fur, sleeping peacefully as if they'd been house cats their entire lives. The mother was curled in a protective C shape, with the smallest kitten tucked firmly against her belly. The bold one sprawled half on top of its mother, one paw stretched out dramatically. The chirpy one slept with its mouth slightly open, as if it might start vocalizing even in its dreams. They must have come in through the dog door Indy used for his backyard excursions. "Roger!" Pat called, her voice strangled. "Roger!" Roger appeared, took one look, and actually started laughing. A real, genuine belly laugh that shook his shoulders and made his Hawaiian shirt ripple like ocean waves. "Well," he managed between chuckles, "I guess we know where they went. And they brought the whole family this time." But it was Indy's reaction that made the whole absurd situation absolutely perfect. The Toller stood about 5 feet away from his bed, his head tilted at that characteristic questioning angle, his tail wagging slowly in a gesture that seemed more curious than upset. He looked at the sleeping bobcats, 4 of them, taking up every inch of his beloved bed. He looked at his humans, his amber eyes wide with what could only be described as bewilderment. He looked back at the bobcats, as if hoping they might have vanished. Then he walked over to Pat and sat down, leaning heavily against her leg, and gave her a look that was so expressive, so perfectly timed, so utterly filled with confused acceptance that both she and Roger started laughing until tears ran down their faces. His eyes clearly said, "You guys have new members? All of them? On my bed?" There was no anger in his gaze, no jealousy over his stolen throne. Just pure, confused, utterly dog-like acceptance of this bizarre situation his humans had somehow created. He glanced back at the bobcats one more time, then let out one of his signature sighs, this one particularly long and dramatic, and laid down on the floor next to Pat's feet as if to say, "Fine. I'll just be down here on the hard floor while they enjoy my bed." They called Maria immediately, of course, who arrived with the team within the hour, barely containing her amazement. "In all my years," she kept repeating. "In all my years of wildlife rescue, I have never seen anything like this." The bobcats were still sleeping when they entered, and waking them required the kind of gentle persistence one might use with stubborn teenagers on a Saturday morning. The mother opened one eye, assessed the humans, and seemingly decided they weren't a threat. The bold kitten woke up swinging, tiny paws batting at air. The small one burrowed deeper into the bed. The chirpy one started its running commentary immediately, a stream of squeaks and mews that seemed to announce, "We were sleeping, very comfortable sleeping, on this excellent bed." "They usually bolt at the first sight of humans," Maria said, carefully scooping up the small kitten. She must have felt incredibly safe here. She remembered this was where her babies had been. And that bed, she gestured at Indy's memory foam throne, probably felt safer and more comfortable than anywhere in the wild. For a mother who just went through the trauma of losing her 3 kittens, then being trapped herself, this house represented safety. After the bobcats were released, this time with tracking collars to monitor their adjustment back to the wild, Pat and Roger spent the rest of the day cleaning their bathroom, repairing their attic, sealing the roof hole, and trying to explain to their children over the phone why there were claw marks on the porcelain and why they needed to replace the bathroom shower curtain. But it was evening, when they were finally settled on the couch with Indy between them, that Pat said what they were both thinking. "That mother," she said softly, stroking Indy's ears. "She traveled through an attic, into a strange house, got trapped in a bathroom, endured capture, and then still felt safe enough to bring all 3 of her babies back here to sleep." Roger nodded, scratching behind Indy's other ear. "Pretty remarkable, isn't it? The things we do for family. She could have taken them anywhere in that entire preserve, but she chose to come back here." Indy, perhaps sensing the solemnity of the moment, rested his head on Pat's lap and sighed. One of his signature sighs, but this one seemed different. Content, maybe. Or perhaps just relieved that his bed was finally his own again and these strange spotted creatures were gone. "You know," Pat continued, watching the sunset through their window, 3 kittens. 3 distinct personalities, just like Maria said. The brave one, the quiet one, the talkative one. Just like our kids were. And just like our kids, Roger added with a smile, they completely took over the house. The story became legendary in their neighborhood, then in local news, and eventually made its way to viral social media posts with headlines like, "Bobcat family invades home, dog remains unimpressed," and "Wildcats choose dog bed over desert, dog has questions." But for Pat and Roger, it remained something more personal. A reminder that home isn't just about walls and roofs and locked doors. It's about the moments when those boundaries blur, when the wild and the domestic collide in unexpected ways, when fear transforms into trust. And sometimes, it's about a very patient, very confused dog who's willing to share his bed with an entire family of bobcats, a mother and 3 rambunctious kittens, and 2 humans crazy enough to see the magic in the chaos. Indy got 3 additional dog beds after that. "Just in case," Pat said. "One for each kitten," she joked, "if they ever decided to come back. You never knew when wildlife might come calling again." She placed them strategically around the house, one by the fireplace, one in the sunroom, one on the back patio. Roger teased her mercilessly about running a bobcat bed and breakfast, but secretly he hoped they would visit again too. Not for the chaos or the fear or the destroyed shower curtain, but for that singular moment when a wild mother looked at their home and saw sanctuary, a safe place for her family. That evening, As the desert cooled and the stars emerged, Indy lay on his reclaimed throne, finally at peace. But every now and then, he'd lift his head and sniff the air, detecting the faint wild scent that still lingered on his bed. And if Pat didn't know better, she'd swear she saw the ghost of a smile on his face. The look of a dog who'd experienced something extraordinary and lived to sigh about it. "You did good, buddy," Roger said, giving Indy a treat. "Sharing's tough, especially when it's your favorite spot and there are 4 wild cats involved." Indy accepted the treat with dignity, chomped it thoughtfully, and then did something that made both Pat and Roger burst into laughter. He walked over to one of the new beds Pat had bought, circled it 3 times, and laid down with an enormous theatrical sigh as if to say, "Fine, I'll try this one. But just so we're clear, if those spotted freeloaders come back, we're going to need to have a serious discussion about boundaries." That, Pat thought, as she watched the last light fade from the desert sky, was worth all the scratched bath mats, destroyed shower curtains, and sleepless nights in the world. The memory of 4 bobcats, 1 fierce mother and 3 tiny distinct personalities, sleeping peacefully on a dog bed, while 1 very patient toddler stood by and accepted his fate with nothing more than a confused look and a long-suffering sigh. It was a story about family, about safety, about the unexpected ways the wild world and the human world can intersect. And mostly, it was about Indy, the goodest boy in Scottsdale, who learned that sometimes love means sharing your most prized possession with a family of wild cats, even if you think they're absolutely ridiculous for taking it in the first place.